At 68, Betty Williams walked through her cluttered home and made a decision that shocked her family. She had just 48 hours before her grandchildren's surprise visit, and her house looked like a storage unit explosion. But instead of panicking, she used 7 brutal decluttering hacks that completely transformed her space. The results were so dramatic that her neighbors started asking for her secrets. What she discovered in those 2 days didn't just change her home, it changed her entire life. If you're drowning in decades of accumulated belongings and feel overwhelmed by where to start, these aren't your typical organizing tips. These are the no-nonsense strategies that actually work when time is running out and you need real results fast. I'm about to share the exact system that helped Betty reclaim her sanctuary and rediscover the joy of living in her own space. But first, let me ask you something. When was the last time you felt truly comfortable having unexpected guests? If you're like most seniors, you've probably accumulated decades of meaningful possessions, gifts from loved ones, and items you thought you'd need someday. There's no shame in this, it's completely normal. But here's what I've learned from helping hundreds of seniors transform their homes. The traditional decluttering advice doesn't work for us. We don't need Marie Kondo's folding techniques or Instagram-worthy organizing systems. We need brutal, honest strategies that respect our memories while creating space for our future. These 7 hacks are specifically designed for seniors who want real results without the overwhelm. They're not about throwing away everything you love, they're about making smart, strategic decisions that honor your past while clearing space for what truly matters now. If this sounds like something you need to hear, hit that like button right now and let me know in the comments what room in your house needs the most help. Hack number 1, the 5-box funeral method. Betty started with what I call the 5-box funeral method, and it's probably the most brutal but effective technique you'll ever use. Here's why it works. Instead of making endless decisions about every single item, you're conducting a funeral for the life you used to live. Sounds harsh? It's supposed to be. Change requires honesty, and honesty sometimes hurts. Get 5 boxes and label them clearly. Love and use. Love but don't use. Neutral. Dislike, and broken dreams. The last box is the most important. It's for items that represent dreams that didn't happen, hobbies you abandoned, or versions of yourself that no longer exist. Betty filled an entire box with craft supplies for projects she'd never start, exercise equipment she'd never use again, and clothes for a social life she no longer wanted. The breakthrough came when she realized she wasn't dishonoring her past, she was making peace with it. Start with one room, set a timer for 2 hours, and don't overthink it. Your first instinct is usually right. When you pick up an item, ask yourself, does this belong in my life today, or am I keeping it for a person I used to be? The love but don't use box is crucial. These are items with sentimental value that deserve better than gathering dust. Take photos of them, write down the memories, then donate them to someone who will actually use them. What surprises most people is how liberating the broken dreams box becomes. Instead of feeling sad, Betty felt relief. She was finally giving herself permission to let go of obligations she'd carried for years. One senior told me, "I kept my mother's china for 30 years, but I never used it because I was afraid of breaking it. Now someone else gets to make memories with it." The key is speed. Don't linger over each item. If you can't decide in 30 seconds, it goes in the neutral box to revisit later. By the end of 2 hours, you'll have sorted an entire room and gained clarity about what truly matters in your life right now. Hack number 2, the replacement rule. Rampage. The second hack Betty used was the replacement rule. Rampage, and it's designed to stop the endless accumulation that got you here in the first place. Here's how it works. For every new item that enters your home, 2 items must leave. Sounds simple, but it requires a complete mindset shift. Most seniors struggle with this because we grew up in an era of scarcity. We saved everything because you never know when you might need it. But here's the brutal truth, that mindset is now working against you. Your home has become a museum of just-in-case items that are stealing your peace. Betty implemented this rule immediately after her initial purge, and within weeks, she noticed her home staying cleaner with less effort. The magic happens when you realize you're not just removing clutter, You're becoming more intentional about what deserves space in your life. Start by identifying your problem areas. For most seniors, it's kitchen gadgets, linens, books, and clothing. Set up a donation station, a box or bag that's always ready to go. When you buy new towels, immediately put 4 old ones in the donation box. When you get a new book, choose 2 to pass along. The psychological benefit is huge. You're no longer a passive victim of accumulation. You're actively curating your environment. One woman shared with me, "I used to feel guilty throwing things away, but now I feel proud when I donate items someone else can use." The Rampage part comes in during your initial implementation. Spend one day going through specific categories, all your coffee mugs, every kitchen gadget, all your sweaters. Apply the replacement rule retroactively. If you have 12 coffee mugs but only use 2, donate 10. If you have 15 sweaters but only wear 5, pass along 10. Be ruthless during this phase because you're establishing new boundaries for your space. The rule also works for gifts and sentimental items. When family members give you new decorations or clothing, graciously accept them, then quietly donate older items in the same category. You're not being ungrateful, you're being responsible for your own living environment. The long-term impact is remarkable. Your home becomes easier to clean, items are easier to find, and you stop feeling overwhelmed by your own possessions. Hack number 3, the deadline declutter destruction. Betty's third strategy was the deadline declutter destruction, and it's specifically designed for seniors who overthink every decision. The premise is brutal but effective. If you haven't used something in the past year, and you can't name a specific occasion when you'll use it in the next 6 months, it goes. No exceptions, no negotiations, no what-if scenarios. This hack works because it removes the endless mental gymnastics that keep us paralyzed. We spend more time thinking about decluttering than actually doing it. Betty set a kitchen timer for 15 minutes per category and made lightning-fast decisions. The results were shocking. She cleared out 3 closets in one afternoon. Here's why this works so well for seniors. We've lived long enough to know our actual habits versus our imagined habits. You know whether you're really going to use that fondue pot again. You know whether you'll actually read those magazines you've been saving. The deadline forces honesty. Start with categories that have clear usage patterns: kitchen items, cleaning supplies, seasonal decorations. If you haven't pulled out the Christmas village in 3 years, you're not going to suddenly start displaying it again. If the pasta maker is covered in dust, you're not entering an Italian cooking phase. The destruction part means you're not gently setting aside items to reconsider later, you're making permanent decisions. One senior told me, "I kept a treadmill for 8 years thinking I'd start exercising. The deadline hack made me admit I was fooling myself. Someone else is using it now, and I don't feel guilty anymore." For sentimental items, use a modified version. If you can't remember the last time you looked at something, or if seeing it doesn't bring you joy, let it go. Photos are especially important here. Don't keep blurry, duplicate, or unflattering photos just because they're old. Keep the ones that actually capture good memories. The psychological breakthrough happens when you realize that keeping unused items isn't honoring them, it's wasting them. That beautiful vase deserves to hold flowers, not gather dust in a closet. Those books deserve to be read, not used as decoration. When you free items to be used by others, you're completing their purpose instead of trapping them in limbo. Hack number 4, the sentimental slaughter system. The fourth hack is the most emotionally challenging but potentially life-changing: the sentimental slaughter system. Betty discovered that 80% of her clutter wasn't functional items, it was emotional baggage disguised as keepsakes. This system helps you separate genuine sentiment from guilt-based keeping. First, understand the difference between honoring memories and hoarding memories. Honoring means keeping items that genuinely connect you to positive experiences. Hoarding means keeping everything because you feel guilty about letting go. Betty realized she was keeping her late husband's clothes not because they brought her comfort, but because getting rid of them felt like betraying his memory. The system works in 3 phases: memory capture, meaning assessment, and strategic selection. In memory capture, you photograph items and write down the specific memory they represent. This is crucial because often the story is more important than the object. Betty found that writing about her grandmother's china helped her remember the Sunday dinners more vividly than looking at dusty plates ever did. The meaning assessment phase is brutal but necessary. Ask yourself, am I keeping this because it brings me joy, or because I'm afraid of what others might think if I let it go? Many seniors keep items out of obligation to deceased relatives or fear of judgment from family members. But here's the truth. Your deceased loved ones don't benefit from you living in a cluttered home. They would want you to be comfortable and happy. Strategic selection means keeping a few representative items instead of everything. Instead of saving all of your mother's jewelry, keep the pieces you'd actually wear or display. Instead of storing every school project your children made, keep the most meaningful ones and photograph the rest. One breakthrough technique is the museum method. If you wouldn't put it in a museum dedicated to this person or memory, question whether it deserves space in your home. Betty kept one of her husband's shirts that still smelled like his cologne, donated the rest, and felt closer to his memory than she had in years. The slaughter part sounds harsh, but it's really about resurrection, bringing meaningful items back to life instead of letting them suffocate in storage. Display the things you love, use the things that serve you, and let everything else go to people who will appreciate them. This isn't about forgetting the past, it's about choosing which parts of the past deserve to take up space in your present. Hack number 5, the future self filter fury. Betty's fifth strategy was the future self filter fury, and it completely changed how she thought about her possessions. Instead of making decisions based on who she used to be or who she thought she should be, she started making decisions based on who she actually was becoming. This hack is specifically powerful for seniors because we often hold on to items for versions of ourselves that no longer exist. The filter works by asking one simple question about every item. Will the person I'm becoming in the next 5 years actually use this? Be honest about your changing needs, interests, and physical capabilities. Betty realized she was keeping hiking boots for knees that could no longer handle trails, cookbooks for entertaining she no longer enjoyed, and formal dresses for events she no longer attended. The fury part comes from the speed and decisiveness required. Don't deliberate, trust your instincts about your future self. If you hesitate, the answer is probably no. This hack is particularly effective for clothing, hobby supplies, and books. Your future self might have different style preferences, different interests, and different physical needs. That's not failure, that's evolution. Betty kept one formal dress that made her feel confident and donated 12 that made her feel like she was wearing someone else's life. The psychological shift is profound. Instead of feeling guilty about who you no longer are, you start feeling excited about who you're becoming. Your future self deserves a home that supports their actual lifestyle, not the lifestyle you think you should have. Apply this filter to your kitchen. Will future you really make elaborate meals from scratch, or do you prefer simple, healthy options? Your hobby room, are you actually going to take up painting again, or do you prefer digital activities now? Your wardrobe, will future you attend formal events, or do you prefer comfortable, casual gatherings? The breakthrough moment comes when you realize you're not giving up on yourself, you're accepting yourself. Betty told her family, I spent years trying to be the person I thought I should be instead of embracing who I actually am. My home finally reflects my real life instead of my imagined life. One senior shared, I kept expensive exercise equipment thinking I needed to stay the same forever. When I donated it and used the space for a reading nook, I realized I was finally being kind to myself instead of punishing myself for changing. The future self filter eliminates guilt because you're making decisions based on realistic expectations rather than fantasy obligations. Hack number 6, the Duplicate Destruction Derby. The sixth hack Betty employed was the Duplicate Destruction Derby, and it revealed something shocking. She was living with enough duplicates to stock a small store. This strategy focuses on the hidden clutter that accumulates when we forget what we already own. The derby format makes it competitive and fun instead of overwhelming. Start by gathering all items in specific categories from throughout your house. Betty was amazed to discover she had 23 coffee mugs, 18 dish towels, 31 pens that worked, and 47 books she'd never read. The visualization is powerful. Seeing everything together makes the excess undeniable. The destruction part means you're not just organizing duplicates, you're eliminating them permanently. Keep only what you actually use, plus one backup. For most items, this means keeping 2 to 3 maximum. Betty kept her 2 favorite coffee mugs and donated 21. She kept 3 dish towels and donated 15. The space she reclaimed was immediate and dramatic. This hack works exceptionally well for seniors because we tend to accumulate duplicates over decades without realizing it. Every time we couldn't find something, we bought another one. Every time someone gave us a gift, we kept it even if we already had similar items. The derby makes it a game instead of a chore. Challenge yourself to find the most duplicates in each category. One senior found 37 pairs of reading glasses throughout her house. She kept 3 and donated 34 to a vision charity. The categories that typically have the most duplicates are cleaning supplies, office supplies, kitchen tools, linens, cosmetics, and medications. Betty found expired medications dating back 15 years, enough cleaning supplies to last a decade, and office supplies from jobs she'd retired from years ago. The psychological benefit is huge. When you eliminate duplicates, everything becomes easier to find, easier to store, and easier to maintain. You stop that frustrating cycle of buying things you already own. The space you reclaim can be used for things that actually matter to you. One woman told me, "I found so many duplicate items that I didn't need to buy household supplies for 6 months. I used the money I saved to take a trip with my grandchildren instead." The derby format keeps it fun. You're competing against your own accumulation patterns instead of feeling overwhelmed by them. Keep score. How many duplicate items can you eliminate in each room? Betty eliminated over 200 duplicate items in her 48-hour transformation, and each elimination felt like a victory instead of a loss. Hack number 7, the Legacy Liberation Lockdown. Betty's final and most powerful hack was the Legacy Liberation Lockdown, and it completely transformed her relationship with her possessions. This isn't about getting rid of everything, it's about intentionally choosing what legacy you want to leave and what burden you want to lift from your loved ones. The lockdown mentality means you're making final decisions, not temporary ones. Betty realized she wasn't just decluttering for herself, she was preventing her children from having to make these difficult decisions later. The liberation comes from understanding that your true legacy isn't your stuff, it's your values, wisdom, and the memories you created. Start by having honest conversations with your family about what they actually want to inherit. Betty was shocked to learn that her children had no interest in most of the items she was saving for them. Her daughter wanted one specific cookbook and her wedding ring. Her son wanted his father's toolbox and one family photo. Everything else she'd been preserving was more burden than blessing. The lockdown process involves 3 steps: legacy identification, story preservation, and freedom distribution. In legacy identification, choose 10 to 20 items that genuinely represent your values and family history. These are items with stories, not just stuff. Betty chose her grandmother's rolling pin because it represented the family tradition of baking together, not because it was expensive or pretty. Story preservation is crucial. Write down or record the stories behind your legacy items. The story is often more valuable than the object itself. Betty created a simple notebook with photos and stories about each legacy item, turning possessions into family history. Freedom distribution means everything else gets distributed to people who will actually use and appreciate it. This isn't about throwing things away, it's about completing the circle of usefulness. Betty's piano went to a family with young children learning to play. Her extensive cookbook collection went to a culinary student. Her craft supplies went to a senior center. The psychological breakthrough is profound. You realize that hoarding items doesn't preserve your legacy, it buries it. When you intentionally choose what to pass on, you're curating meaning instead of creating obligation. One senior told me, I spent years worried about what would happen to my things after I die. Now I'm excited about the stories they'll create in their new homes while I'm still alive to see it. The lockdown also includes creating systems to prevent reaccumulation. Betty established a 1-in, 2-out permanent rule and designated specific spaces for specific categories. She also scheduled quarterly mini purges to maintain her transformation. The liberation aspect means you're not just organizing your home, you're designing your future. Betty's house became a place where she could age comfortably, where family could visit easily, and where she felt proud instead of overwhelmed. 48 hours after Betty started, her home was completely transformed. But the real change wasn't just physical, it was emotional and psychological. For the first time in years, she felt proud to give impromptu tours to neighbors. Her grandchildren had space to play without moving piles of belongings. Most importantly, Betty felt like she was living in her home instead of being held hostage by it. The numbers were staggering. She had donated 23 bags of items, recycled 12 boxes of paper and electronics, and reclaimed over 300 square feet of usable space. But the real transformation was in her daily life. Cleaning took half the time, she could find everything she needed, and she stopped feeling overwhelmed by her own possessions. Betty's energy returned because she wasn't constantly managing clutter. Her stress decreased because her environment supported her instead of fighting against her. 6 months later, Betty's transformation had inspired her entire social circle. She became the go-to person for decluttering advice, not because she was naturally organized, but because she had learned to make decisions based on her actual life instead of her imagined obligations. The most powerful change was psychological. Betty stopped feeling guilty about her past and started feeling excited about her future. Her home became a launching pad for new experiences instead of a storage unit for old ones. If Betty's story resonates with you, it's time to start your own 48-hour transformation. Don't wait for the perfect moment, start with just one of these hacks today. Pick the one that scared you the most while watching this video, because that's probably the one you need most. Remember, you're not just decluttering your home, you're reclaiming your life. If this video helped you see your clutter differently, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs this message. Your transformation could inspire theirs. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. Don't let another day pass feeling overwhelmed by your own home. Your future self is waiting for you to make the first move. Start today, and in 48 hours, you could be living Betty's transformation story.